So, on a previous episode, I talked about my introduction to running for office and the scariest moment in my campaign so far, where I sat in the office of Jay Jacobs, the head of the New York State Democratic Committee, surrounded by pictures of Jay with countless leaders, presidents, presidential candidates, etc. I was terrified as all heck, which is why I invited to be our very special guest on this podcast, the one and only Jay Jacobs. We will hear from him in just a moment. My name is Dave Kerpen, and I am the candidate.
What does it really take to run for local office? On The Candidate, we're pulling back the curtain on the messy, expensive, and sometimes bizarre world of local politics. Join us as we share the unfiltered truth about what happens before you see those campaign signs pop up in your neighborhood. I'm your host, Jess Milanis. We're following serial entrepreneur Dave Kerpen as he dives headfirst into the world of local politics. Ready for a change in the world? This is your opportunity to be the candidate.
Jay, it's so great to have you. Thanks for making some time for us today. You are a very, very distinguished leader in the state of New York. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this fascinating business of politics.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for the nice compliment. I would say that, I've always been interested in politics from my earliest days. I've always been interested in history. Back in the mid-'90s, I was introduced to the then Nassau County Democratic Chair. His name was Steve Sabbath, by a friend of mine who knew him. There was some talk of me maybe running for Congress. I decided not to do it in that year. It would have been against Peter King. It was 1994. Had I decided to run and had I won, I would have been the only challenging Democrat that would have won in the entire country that year. So my guess is it wouldn't have been a good outcome. But I got involved. I started working for the party, raising money, et cetera, and the rest. Before you know it, I ended up to be the chairman.
Love it. And you and I are both entrepreneurs. You own a number of camps now, a bed and breakfast, if I believe correctly. How have you balanced your entrepreneurship and business interests with all of the work that you do now for the Democratic Party?
Well, a lot of what I learned in business has been helpful in politics. There's no question about it. But, I have good teams. I have a great team in my business world, and they really do a great job. My wife is a part of that team, and she does an excellent job, as well as, everybody that works with me. And then the same thing in politics. I've managed to find and retain some really great people who are not just loyal, but they're sharp and keep me out of trouble and get a lot of the nitty gritty done. And you learn how to delegate, but you also learn how to manage time and make sure that you're not focused on things that you don't need to focus on, and just stay, laser focused on those things that you do.
Yeah, I'm learning that on the go as well. I mean, I guess I've learned that as an entrepreneur, but I'm learning it again as now as a candidate. Another thing that I've learned, you mentioned fundraising. I knew fundraising would be a big part of this experience. I didn't realize just how big it was. I asked my consultants the other day what percentage of my time they think I should be spending on fundraising, and I had everyone write down the number, sort of separately, right? And I wrote down like 30%. My three consultants on the call wrote 80, 80, and 90%. So, what has been your experience with respect to fundraising? Well, first of all, thank you. Of course, you've been very supportive of my campaign, so thank you for financially. So thank you for that. What have you learned about fundraising, and how is it different, fundraising for politics than raising money or asking for money in business?
Yeah, well, let's remember something about who you asked the question. Consultants are the ones who want you to raise the money because they're the ones that actually end up getting the money. So let's just be fair about that.
Fair point.
What I would say to you is that I do a lot of fundraising as well for our charitable philanthropic efforts. It's a lot easier because people relate to that more clearly. Also, I think it's tax deductible, which doesn't hurt. But I would say to you that, look, it's the same thing. You have to believe in what you're doing, believe in the cause. If you believe in it, then you'll be able to make the case to those people that you're asking for some big money. And you just got to put your head down and do it. It's a tough part of the business, no question. But without the money, you can't get your message out.
Jay, you've been involved, as you mentioned, for a bit here. How have you seen the landscape change in politics and for the Democratic Party in the last, say, 10, 15 years?
Well, politics is a cyclical business. So, you're up one time and then you're down the next. And the trick is, to remember when you're up and you win and all is great, that, you can keep it for a while, but then sooner or later, it's like the roller coaster. You start heading down that hill. So you got to be careful about that. Can't get too heady. I keep a model of the Titanic here in my office. And that's just because that's an example of humanity's among its greatest examples of arrogance. So, I want to remember, don't get arrogant in this business because, as I said, there are ups and there are downs. Now, the business of politics is pretty much, it's not changing all that much. It shifts here and there. But, you've got ambition, you've got different issues and problems that are emerging. You've got all of the storylines that have been, written throughout history. The same types of things. They say history repeats itself. Well, in politics, it certainly does. So now, of course, there are issues between the left wing of the party and the moderate progressives, the centrists, if you will. But that hasn't changed over the years. And today the Republicans are up. Watch out tomorrow. We'll see.
Right. Well, if it's cyclical as of course you say, and as of course I believe, then sooner or later things will change for the better for us Democrats and for me here in Long Island. You mentioned this rift between or you didn't say rift. You mentioned the challenge that is the diversity amongst the Democratic Party, and that's another thing that I think I've learned along the way. I was not expecting quite as much diversity of opinion within the party and within folks that I do believe will in fact support me. How have you managed that diversity of opinion within the Democratic Party? Because it does seem, and perhaps like you said, it's always been there, but it does seem like, at least for me, it's more pronounced than maybe I expected, at least.
Well, I think one of the things that I've tried not to be is a phony. So I like to tell people when I agree with them, and I tell people when I disagree with them. And those go for people in my own party. And it's not that I necessarily disagree with the idea that they're advocating. I often tell folks on the far left, I call it, sometimes they take offense to that, but I don't know how else to describe it. I tell them, look, the idea you're bringing up may be the best, smartest, most creative, and the idea that should happen. I mean, it's the greatest idea in the world. The only problem you have, it's a small problem, is that nobody's buying it. They don't want it. And if you believe this is a democracy, and you believe in the fact, and you want it to be a democracy, then you've got to be cognizant of the fact that what you're trying to sell to the market is just not popular. And if it's not, it's hurting us. So what I always suggest is, yes, come up with these great ideas. Yes, keep pushing in the direction that you want to go, but be mindful of the realities. And so often people say to me, "Well, Jay, because of you and your wing of the party, the moderates, we're losing the base. We're losing the base." That's nonsense. That's pure garbage, because the base is a pretty broad group of people. Yeah, you might be losing some people, but you're gaining other people. If you look out here on Long Island, when you're talking about some of these very progressive ideas, and you're talking about things that are now described, if you will, and I don't like it, but this is how they describe the woke culture or the identity politics and all these things. In many respects, they hurt Democrats out in places like this. And if your goal is to actually advance a progressive democratic agenda, then the first step is not having an artistic success, not having the smartest, greatest, most creative idea. the first thing you got to do is win elections. Democrats have to be in the majority. If you don't do that, everything else is worthless. So I'm all about winning elections. Then we'll worry about what we do once we've got the power, and hopefully not overdo it so we get thrown out before we get our job done.
Right. I love that pragmatism, and I also really love the authenticity. I mean, that's something that's really, really important to me, is to not lose myself in any way in this process. And it's challenging because, clearly I'll meet with some people that want me to answer one way or the other. And at the end of the day, as somebody that's written about and preached authenticity and transparency my whole life and whole career, I don't really see another way except to be me, and hope that that resonates with enough folks to win elections. Let's talk about advice that you would share with candidates out there. One of the goals of this podcast, Jay, is to help inspire non-politicians out there that may be interested in serving, but not know how to do it, be scared, just not know the first thing to do. What advice would you give to somebody, a potential candidate out there that's listening, who doesn't know exactly how or when or why, but wants to serve?
Well, I'll paraphrase a bit of a story that Harry Truman told when he first got into the United States Senate. And he got there in a way from Missouri, where he was kind of discounted as called a lightweight, pretty much. But he got there and he was talking to one of the members of the Senate about how overwhelmed he was and the fact he couldn't believe he actually got there. And the senator, who'd been there a long time, said, well, right now, you're having a hard time believing that you got here. After you're here a little while, you'll have a hard time believing that all these other guys actually got here. Okay? So it's the same thing in politics. You just got to jump in. For the most part, I have to tell you, while well-intentioned most of the people are, it's a mix. And if you work hard, if you you study the facts and get the case right, and if you can keep your integrity and you can hold on to your values and be honest, I think certainly with yourself, I think you can have a good role, have a good go of it in politics.
Love that. Thank you. And it's true. It's funny. I in my whole career, I have had imposter syndrome, like so many others, so many other successful folks. And I've always thought, at this level, people will be too smart for me, or people will be, they'll know so much more. And then I've arrived, and I've been like, wow. Actually, people are pretty. There's some smart people. There's some not so smart people. There's some nice people. There's some not so nice people. There's some, and I think you're right that politics and government is quite similar. There's some really brilliant folks, and there's some folks that, like Truman said, I don't know how they ended up here. But speaking of storytelling, you're such a great storyteller, and I have this just really strong memory of walking into your office for the first time and seeing all these pictures and being really overwhelmed and impressed. Tell me a story about one of the folks that you've worked with that listeners will all, whose name listeners will all recognize.
Well, I've had quite a few people that I call myself, at least to friends. Actually, I've told this to Hillary Clinton. I said I consider myself Forrest Gump. All of a sudden you end up, and here I'm talking to all of these former presidents, former first ladies, secretaries of state. I've been with, certainly spent time with Obama and Biden and the rest of them. And, you get to a point, it never gets old. I'll tell you that. But I think that, watching Bill Clinton in action close in, and watching how he engages with people and how his eyes are laser focused on the person he's talking to, never mind the fact that there are people standing within eyeshot who want his attention or are waiting to get that attention. He doesn't flinch. He's always with the person that he's talking to at the moment. That kind of detail and care in dealing with an individual and the humanity of it all, and that comes through in the things that he's done, and his character generally. Is he a man without flaws or having made no mistakes? Of course not. But you take a look at the person and you spend some time with them. And I've had the privilege of traveling to Haiti with them. I've traveled to Africa and been on safari with them. Nothing like going on safari with a former president of the United States. I have to tell you, you get kind of spoiled. But these are just unique individuals, and it's just been a privilege spending time with them.
Amazing. Let me go back to, I could follow up with several questions about Clinton on Safari, but I think I would digress too much. But I can't. There's puns ready to go. But let me get back to candidates for a moment here, because we are the candidate podcast and individually. What mistakes have you seen candidates make? What would you say are the most common mistakes you've seen political candidates make, Jay?
I think the most common mistake that a candidate makes is getting into the race and think they know what they're doing. I've heard from candidates, oh, we're not going to do any negative ads. I don't want to have anything negative to say. All right, goodbye. That's the end of your race, because unfortunately, and I don't like it either, but that's what people respond to. So they're going to be beating the tar out of you on the other side, and you're just not going to, you'll defend yourself, but you're not going to say anything about your opponent. Well, you're going to lose the race. It's as simple as that. The other thing that I've seen that candidates do is they think they've got to talk to every voter. And I try to make it clear to candidates, you walk into a diner, I tell the story, and there's 200 voters there, and you start making the rounds. You want to talk to every single one of them. It's going to take you a couple hours to get through to talk to every one of those 200 people. But here's the news for you. 2/3 of them don't live in your district. Well, what a waste of time. Of the third that do live in your district, if you're running in a local race, only 1/3 of them are actually going to vote, never mind whether they like you or they don't like you. Of the 1/3 that are going to vote, of the remaining third that can possibly in your district vote, half are going to dislike you from the get-go and wouldn't vote for you no matter what you said. So, you're talking to the wrong people. You have to find the people who are able to vote in your district, are likely to vote in your district, and are persuadable. Those are the people you have to spend time with, not just everybody. So candidates waste a lot of time and talk to the wrong people for too long. And on the other hand, they also think they know how to run a campaign. Let the campaign professionals run the campaign. You come up with the messaging and do your part. And yes, raise the money.
Yeah, love that. And the good news is I know that I know nothing. So, but one thing that I do know as well, and that I plan to borrow from my previous career in social media, is using technology to reach more people. I do think, well, I can't reach everyone, certainly, and it's certainly a waste to go door to door with the wrong people. The tools that social media and AI have given us now allows me to reach most of that 250,000 people, at least online. I've done a lot of research already on the 250,000 people in North Hempstead and where they are on Facebook and where they are on Instagram, where they are on TikTok, et cetera. And so the nice thing is we do have some tools that will allow us to reach more people. That being said, I know what I don't know, and one of my favorite quotes to paraphrase is Aristotle, that said, the older that he got, the less he knew, because the more he realized how little he knew.
Right.
So we have just a couple more minutes left here, Jay. We're gonna do some quick rapid fire questions for you. Who, if you could choose just one politician to have dinner with, who's alive, who would that be and why?
Politician who's alive that I haven't had dinner with. Okay.
Well, I'll let you do a repeat. You could do a repeat if if it's Obama or
I would have to say probably Bill or Hillary Clinton if they're alive. They are alive, of course. If it was somebody that wasn't alive, I would go with a Winston Churchill.
Love it. Favorite place to hang out in Long Island?
My favorite place, I think, to hang out in Long Island is, frankly, is my home. I love it. It's a place where I go into my library, read, I've got the dog. It's quiet. Nobody's bothering me. That's where I like to be. I like to walk around as well in places like Huntington. I live pretty close to Huntington, and I'm in Laurel Hollow. So if I'm going to walk the streets, I'll go to a small town like Huntington and walk around. But I'm not much. I have places out in the Hamptons, businesses out in the Hamptons, and it's beautiful, but the traffic's just too much. So I stay this side over here.
It is brutal. And finally, finish this sentence. Politics would be better if.
Well, politics would be better if people who disagreed with one another could do so without being disagreeable. I think that, that would really make a whole lot of difference. I look back to the time, not too many decades ago, when whether you're Republican or Democrat at a certain hour, 5 o'clock, who the hell cared? You went and got a drink together. Your families played ball together in Washington. You got to know one another. You had personal relationships. Your kids may have gone to the same schools. And on Sundays, you'd spend time, families together. And you didn't care whether you disagreed with one another on policy. And you know something? When it was time, you fought, and you fought hard for your side and against the other side. But then again, come 5 o'clock, you go have a drink together. That's the kind of environment I'd like to see politics get back to. Because, I'll go out and have dinner with Joe Cairo, my counterpart here in Nassau County. He's the Republican chair. I mean, he's going to go into this election looking to win. He's going to fight hard. And I'm going to do the same thing. Hopefully we both fight fairly. But we're going to fight real hard against each other. But then we'll go out for dinner and, something, we'll have a good time of it. And yet when we need something and it isn't going to be politically detrimental to either side, I'm more than happy to provide it for him, and he's the same for me. And I think that's the way we've got to be. And that's also the way you get to some ability to compromise with one another. Because you got to remember, in a democracy, you never win by 100%. You're lucky if you get a little over 50%. Well, that means there's 48, 49% of the people on the other side, and you got to work with them too.
Well, I love that. And as somebody that is literally attempting to embrace the principles that I've written about for years in terms of likable business and likable leadership, and apply that to politics, civility and getting along, being agreeable, even when we disagree, are right at the top of my list of values that I hope to bring to local government here. So thank you again for joining us. Jay Jacobs, the chair of the New York State Democratic Committee, and a wonderful supporter of my campaign. So thank you again for joining us. And if you're listening and you like what you hear, please spread the word. Give us a rating, subscribe, and stay tuned for more episodes of The Candidate.
Paid for by the Friends of Dave Kerpen.
Thanks for going behind the scenes with us on The Candidate. If you enjoyed getting the real story about running for office, take a moment to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us. See you next time.